This year, the labor shortage in Japan reached its highest level in more than 40 years, and that's only expected to rise as the population gets smaller and older. That's why the government wants more foreign workers. But foreign workers are not always treated well. Human rights advocates say cases of violence and sexual harassment are frequently reported, while many are forced to put up with inadequate accommodations. According to a recent survey, 70% of blue-collar trainees from abroad were illegally underpaid, and some weren't paid at all.
In Japan, there are over 320,000 foreign technical trainees, and Vietnamese technical interns accounted for about 50% of them. These Vietnamese trainees often work in harsh conditions, which led to many work-related deaths and even suicide. I'm standing in front of the Nishinkutsu temple, where you can find these wooden Motorola tablets inscribed with the names of Vietnamese students or workers who died after coming to work in Japan. There are over 140 of them. So why does this keep happening? Let's go inside, and hopefully we can get some insight. 例えば2人と同じようにベトナムから来た人たちがなんかひどいことされたりして逃げたり死んじゃったり亡くなっちゃったりっていうのを聞いた時ってどう思いますか？
私は日本に来ないの方がいいと話する時は私たち人じゃないですね。動物みたいと思います。例えばコンジャロとか、アホとかバカとか、死ねとかその悪い言葉はいっぱい使いました。一番勉強したことは悪い言葉だけですね。
This group, one of 50 from the extreme right, call themselves the New Social Order and normally inhabit the internet. Now they're showing their faces on the street, all but daring the police to shut them down.
我が国は日本国は我々日本人が守るべきだ。そのためにも自前の軍隊、これを持たねばならない。再軍備核武装、これ以外にない。
They claim Japan is a US puppet state.
かつての誇り高く尊い魂を思い起こせ。日本人を立ち上げれ。日本人を立ち上げれ。日本人を立ち上げれ。戦う日本人をいでよ。
They want to bring back the glory days of Imperial Japan, when the country ruled much of Asia. They also want all Koreans and Chinese living in Japan expelled.
我々は本気であるシナ朝鮮人と侵略犯罪者シナ朝鮮人どもと絶対戦う。
The last time they came to blows was when Japan invaded China in the run-up to World War II. After Japan was defeated by the Allies, they were found guilty of war crimes that included the killing of millions of Chinese. The U.S. forced them to adopt a constitution which renounces war and banned them from having any offensive military capabilities. Since then, pacifism has become a part of post-war Japanese culture, with the military confined to self-defense only. But now, that might be changing.
Today, the Japanese parliament approved a controversial policy to allow its military to defend allies in other nations, clearing the way for troop deployments overseas.
Voice is a growing group of ultranationalists called Nippon Kaigi, who have gained a lot of influence inside of Abe's government. They want to go so far as to change the constitution to allow for attack-capable forces. Akira Momochi is the group's strategic advisor.
これはですね、そもそも日本国憲法そのものが GHQ の占領下において押し付けられたものです。憲法というのはその国の歴史伝統を踏まえたものでなくてはならない。日本らしさを取り戻そうということで安倍さんが登場してきたと。
Many people see this, though, as the first step in preparing Japan to go to war.
それは単なるプロパガンダ。
The line between defense and offense is starting to blur. Japan's 2017 military budget is its biggest ever, and the self-defense forces have demonstrated that they're expanding their capabilities on land, in the air, and at sea.
international ban against Japan having aircraft carriers, and so they actually classify this as a helicopter carrier. Not only did the Izumo's commander concede that the ship could be converted into an attack vessel, but it was also recently deployed alongside an American battleship in nearby waters as a clear show of strength. These growing naval capabilities are exactly what Japan wants to project towards China, especially when it comes to their intensifying standoff over a small group of uninhabited islands. Nationalists from both countries frequently make their way out to the islands to plant their country's flag. One regular visitor is Satoru Mizushima, an influential conservative talk show host.
早速話の中に入っていきたいと思うんですけれども。
Behind us we have videos of the Senkaku Islands. What is your opinion of what's going on there right now between China and Japan?
私たちは歴史のいろんな資料とか調べて尖閣諸島が、日本の領土であるということは確信しております。まずそういうことから私たちが今、日本の領土の中で、一番侵略の危険にあるというね。
So do you think that would actually be realistic that war could break out there between Japan and China?
ナチスドイツと最も近い、あるいはもっと言えばスターリンのソ連と一番近かった国がナチスと同じです。あの国はそこを忘れてはならないと私は思います。でそれを軍事利用しようともしていると。こういう中で、我々が戦争をするんじゃなくて戦争を仕掛けられた時我々の国の海上自衛隊あるいは陸上自衛隊航空自衛隊が対応できる。だからこれは憲法を変えて自分の国で守らなきゃいけないってそういうことですね。はい。
This suspicion of an aggressive China appears to be growing, as Japanese nationalists have also taken to the streets to demand a much stronger stance toward China. Tokyo, there are hundreds of people here, and what they're all protesting is Japan's relationship with China. They're all pissed off that China keeps encroaching on Japanese territory.
この領土を中国は今虎視眈々と侵略する。だから私たちは尖閣諸島を
We chartered a boat to the Senkakus to see the disputed territories ourselves. The Japanese Coast Guard intercepted our boat and jumped on board. Konnichiwa.
船長さんにお話ししたいんですけどよろしいですか。
Sure. Oh, first, can I just ask you, why did you stop us?
すいません。今船長さんと I want to talk to the
captain. I understand. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand it because I don't think we're breaking any laws.
船長さんご存知だと思いますけど、今日は巡洋見習いと認定されていない船乗者じゃない方を乗せていらっしゃいますので、この船は私たちの方で石垣港の方に戻したいと思いますので。
The Coast Guard cited an 80-year-old fishing regulation as grounds to turn us away, but based on their past actions, they're concerned that an incident in these waters could spark an actual conflict. So much so that these same Coast Guard vessels will physically block civilian boats from reaching islands. And the hostility on the water is escalating. China has been claiming, constructing, and militarizing islands in the nearby South China Sea, dangerously amping up tensions with the US and its allies in Asia. But if local hostilities did boil over into conflict, it would have major global consequences. Because the original post-war agreements also stipulated that in return for Japan's pacifism, the US is legally bound to defend them.
Japan is looking to amend its pacifist constitution to give its military more fight. Japan has already begun to rearm itself in ways never seen before since the end of World War II. In December last year, the Japanese government announced that its defense budget will be increased to a record $47 billion for the fiscal year that began in April this year. Among others, the allocation will be used to purchase 105 F-35A stealth jets and acquire Japan's first aircraft carriers since World War II.
それはアジアの国々は軍事国家日本によってどれだけ侵略されどれだけ痛めつけられてきたかっていうことをまだみんなちゃんと覚えてますよね。70数年前だって中国だって朝鮮だってもちろんベトナムだってシンガポールだって、全部日本は侵略したわけで軍事国家日本がまた復活したら大変なことになると思ってるじゃないですか。その割に日本は反省してないんですよね。
The dramatic shift in Japan's security policy has sent shockwaves around the region, particularly in China and South Korea, two countries that suffered the brunt of Japan's military aggression in the 20th century.
1931, without even informing their own elected government, the Japanese forces in Manchuria seized the capital Mukden and then overran the rest of the territory. A puppet state, Manchu Kuo, was proclaimed under a puppet ruler. Henry Puyi, the last emperor of China, who had been deposed in 1911, was dragged out of retirement. At its headquarters in Geneva, the League of Nations now faced its first great test. Japan was universally condemned. But her response was blunt.
Japan, however, finds it impossible to accept the report adopted by the Assembly.
The Japanese then just walked out, and the League suddenly realized there was nothing it could do about Manchuria. Japan was declared an international pariah, but it didn't care. Its leaders had turned their eyes to further conquests in China. These were easy pickings. China was in a state of chaos. The government of Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek was locked in conflict with the Chinese Communist Party under Mao Zedong. There was civil war. In 1936, as a precursor to invasion, the Japanese signed a pact with Hitler. The aim was to guard against any attack by Soviet Russia were it to move on China. Then in July 1937, the Japanese provoked an incident with Chinese troops and invaded. At first, the Chinese were taken by surprise, but they soon fought back fiercely, the communists even joining the Kuomintang in a united front. The Japanese responded with amphibious landings. By the end of 1937, they had overrun much of northern China and the coast. The Japanese fought this war with exceptional brutality, bombing cities indiscriminately. Westerners living in the commercial center, the port of Shanghai, were now evacuated. The city was then besieged for 3 months. It suffered widespread damage, the Japanese forces showing no pity or concern for the native population. But it was after the capture of Nanking, then the Chinese capital, on December the 17th, 1937, that the Japanese forces really ran amok. Over 300,000 civilians are estimated to have been massacred during a 6-week orgy of rape and indiscriminate killing. The Japanese even attacked British and US warships which had been sent to protect their shipping and trade. The worst incident came on December the 12th, 1937. The American gunboat Panay was sunk by Japanese bombers. 50 crewmen died. Despite this, the Western powers refused to intervene. So the League of Nations could do nothing. In the United States, President Roosevelt wanted to impose a naval blockade of Japan.
It has become clear that acts and policies of nations in other parts of the world have far-reaching effects on us.
But the British would have none of it, fearing that it might provoke a war. So all Roosevelt could offer was a $25 million loan to Chiang Kai-shek to buy arms. Even though the communists were now fighting alongside the Kuomintang, the Soviet Union did little to help either. Its only involvement was a series of clashes along its own border with Manchuria. But China itself received nothing. Instead, it had to fight on alone. During 1938, the Japanese overran Canton and pushed the Chinese forces deeper into the west of the country. All the rhetoric of the League of Nations, all those promises to stop international aggression had come to nothing. And by now the Western powers were facing aggression much closer to home.